stimulus to create inflation and growth.
It was one of the biggest economic experiments, and I can tell you, as a very young business journalist back then, it was one of the questions I had in a job interview. This is the biggest story of the decade, I was told in my interview, and it was a phenomenal experiment, if you think about it. It was very unconventional at the time. Abenomics was designed to really bring Japan out of years and years of deflation. There were 3 arrows to Abenomics, the first one being monetary policy, ultra low, even negative interest rates at one point, which was very unconventional at the time, huge amounts of stimulus as well, fiscal stimulus, structural reforms, trying to combat what is the aging workforce situation, which is of course a problem that many advanced economies will face. And this is what was so interesting. In many ways, Japan has some of the issues that other advanced economies are facing or will face. So in some ways, it was a model. Was it a success? Well, it's an interesting one speaking to analysts and economists today, because certainly in the first few years, there's no denying that this really did help draw a line under many, many years of deflation for Japan. And we can show you their GDP figures from many years past, and it did lift the economy somewhat, you can see there. But it never had massive liftoff. And some people would say that the third arrow of the 3 arrows, the structural reform, was never fully delivered, and as a result, Abenomics didn't really get to where potentially it could have been. There is no doubt, though, that Shinzo Abe was incredibly proud of this, and recently asked, post-resigning as Prime Minister, what will your legacy be? He said Abenomics.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, we talk about his legacy. It wasn't just in Japan. He left a mark on global monetary policy because he broke the rules.
They did. I mean, they weren't a pioneer maybe of quantitative easing, because we had seen that before, but to the extent that they did it, and the fact that they really threw the kitchen sink at the economy, including huge amounts of quantitative easing and negative interest rates, which of course has actually become incredibly conventional, particularly since the pandemic. It's both a model, though, and I think a lesson, and Japan has been slightly stuck in this ultra-loose monetary policy, very hard to get out of it, partly because of the issues it faces were very different to all the other countries around the world that implemented huge QE programs to fight off an economic shock rather than years of deflation. But getting out of it has been really hard for Japan, and as a result, it's hard to fight economic shocks along the way. And let's not forget, Japan lies on many different fault lines, both literally in terms of the economic risk it faces with earthquakes, natural disasters, but also its position as a major economy, but between China and the US. Its biggest trading partner being China, but the US a huge security partner and ally. It's very vulnerable to geopolitical shocks as well. So having that ultra-loose monetary policy has been hard to fight economic shocks as they've come.
Yeah, interesting to reflect on all that he's done. And you had mentioned when we spoke earlier that he'd actually pulled in so many women into the workforce, and he was also focusing on aging. Yeah, exactly. And also focusing on reversing the sort of the trend of an aging population. So Anna, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Appreciate your time. Right, we'll have more of our breaking news coverage and updates, as well as other news